Well, if you want to, we'll ease around up here, and then I'll give you some history about Jack Henson.
Which way? For how far?
Well, if you'll move out that way a little bit, we'll look back toward the bluff.
Patrol over there.
Now, Gary, if you'll look toward the bluff over there.
That's over here, right?
That's the bluff. Okay, that's Grafton-Reed Bluff. Now, let me give you a little background on Jack Hinson. Well, Jack Henson was a prominent, wealthy landowner and farmer in what they called Bubbling Springs area near Dover. Well, he was wealthy. When the war started, he was, I'd say, independent. He was non-committal. He wasn't committed to the South or North. He was against secession. So during the war, he was well acquainted with the officers, the generals at Fort Donelson. He was in and out of there all the time. But being neutral, why, he had no problem. Then when Fort Donelson fell and was captured by the Federals, he became acquainted with General Grant, and General Grant, it was reported, was spent time in his home. Well, back during the time, the Civil War, after Fort Donelson fell, well, the guerrillas and bushwhackers were real active in this area. So the patrols would come out of Fort Donelson, and a lot of them were attacked by these bushwhackers, and many of them were killed. And the bushwhackers would, guerrillas, they would fire upon these patrols and then fade back into the brush or the dense forest and escape. Well, Jack Henson had several sons. Well, two of his youngest sons, one 21 and one 17, were hunting one fall morning in the fall. I guess they were deer hunting, turkey hunting, and maybe squirrel hunting. But then this Union patrol out of Fort Donelson came upon them, and being they were there and had rifles, they accused him of being bushwhackers or guerrillas. Well, back then they didn't have a trial or anything. They just tied them to a tree and killed them. Well, they dragged their bodies on behind horses through to make an example of them through Dover. Then they decapitated them. They took their heads and they put them on the gate post going into Jack Henson's place. Well, that was it. Jack Henson then became bitter, of course, and rightfully so. And he swore to avenge his son's death, brutal murders. So he had a special made sniper rifle. It was a gigantic gun, weighed 18 pounds. But it was accurate up to 500 yards. Well, on this bluff right up here, there was a cave about 20 some odd feet down below the crest of that bluff. And this is where he set up and hid in that cave. Well, right about where we are in here now is where the river channel ran. It was squeezed down because of an island called Towhead Island. Well, there was a chute that went but close to the riverbank over here. It was called Towhead Chute, naturally. Well, the river runs runs south. Naturally, it doesn't run north, but anyway, as these boats would come up the river and hit this chute where it was squeezed down, they could only travel just very slowly, and so he could pick his targets without any problem. Well, he would sit there, and as these boats would come by, he usually picked the officers, and he had this sniper rifle. It was accurate up to 500 yards or more, and he would pick these officers off. Well, he was credited over a period of time during the Civil War of killing as many as 100, and most of them were officers the first kill he made with his rifle was over around Dover, and this was the lieutenant that gave the orders to kill his sons, and the sergeant, I believe it was, that gave the order to fire upon him and to murder them. So Jack Henson, all through the war, he was credited to kill, like I say, killing probably 100 Union officers. That was his targets. But as they would come through this chute here, these river boats would just travel very slowly against the current because the water was squeezed. I mean, the area was such a narrow place that the current was so swift that the boats couldn't travel very fast, so he had plenty of time to pick his targets. So this is where he would, his sniper would set up on that hill there and fire on these paddle wheel boats back then that would up and down this river. Well, through the war, he like I say, killed an estimated 100 with his sniper rifle. And then when General Forrest was going to the Johnsonville, he guided him on the other side of the river over in Benton County through the thick forest and the swamps down to Johnsonville, and he was well acquainted with Nathan Bedford Forrest. Well, after the war was over, Nathan Bedford Forrest got his rifle. Now the rifle has gone through, down through the relatives of his, and it is now owned by a gentleman in Murfreesboro. So I had the privilege at the book signing that was published about a year ago, and it was in Erin, and I had the privilege of handling this rifle. It weighs 18 pounds. It's a rather heavy rifle.
What's the name of the book?
Beg your pardon?
What was the name of the book?
Jack Henson's One Man War. And anybody that is interested in the Civil War in this area, it's a must to read. And this book is available through Amazon or a lot of these bookstores. And anybody that's interested should read that book. It is very interesting. But it's about the life of Jack Henson. So after the war, he was a hunted man. They had rewards out there, had many men out looking for him, but they never found him. Nobody ever reported him. And he, after the war, they had burned his home and destroyed everything that he had in Bubbling Springs. So he and his family, what was left of them, moved to Magnolia, which is up White Oak Creek. And 1874 is when he passed away. But before that, when he moved there, I believe it was in 1869, maybe something like that. He bought a grist mill, a sawmill, and 280 some odd acres, I believe it was, from my great-great-grandfather, German Jackson, at a sum of, I believe the cost was $3,100 he paid for it. So he had money. Well, he lived there until he was 1874 when he passed away at the age of 67. But when he started his, to get revenge for the death of his sons, he was 57 years old. And back then, you know, that was kind of an old man. So he survived the war, but they never, and he was hunted the rest of his life, but nobody ever turned him in.